Why do most creator businesses burn out after a few years, while Smosh is still here nearly 20 years later, still relevant, still growing, still evolving? The answer sits inside how the company is run. And today on the Business of Creators, I'm talking to CEO Alessandra Catanese to break down their success.
You have to decide as a creator, how much of your art do you want to sacrifice to focus on the business? The creator CEO hybrid is pushing for things creatively that don't always make sense business-wise or financially, or the other way around. One of the reasons why Anthony and Ian picked me as the CEO is because they wanted to be able to focus on their art.
This episode is about why Smosh has lasted when so many others haven't. I'm Ian Shepherd. This is the Business of Creators. Let's jump straight into it.
Smosh is looking to usher in the next gen of comedians. We are on a path to become and feel that we are a premium comedy brand. And that means we don't want people to just think about the YouTube channels. We want to be able to make our stamp in the industry beyond the YouTube channels. Although I will say, the YouTube channels are our bread and butter. They're certainly the most important to us, and we love being able to have an AVOD solution consistently for our audience. We never want them to feel like everything Smosh is behind a paywall and it makes us inaccessible, so we like the accessibility. We love to work with YouTube. They're great supporters of us, and I think the things we're able to do and get away with on YouTube are so much more fun sometimes than when you think of traditional and how serious things can be. But we love to break fourth wall, But what I'd say is, as we look to the future of Smosh, we're becoming a premium comedy brand. We're ushering the next gen of talent, and we'll always be dedicated to our mission statement, which is to make people laugh through comedy rooted in friendship.
Excellent. Well, I'm really excited to get into all of it. Let's start with your path to the CEO. So when Ian and Anthony were looking for a CEO, what were they looking for?
Yeah, so I had been managing Anthony for a few years. I started managing him maybe a few months after he left Smosh, maybe 6 months or so. But so I had been working with him for a while, so maybe 7 years at the time, 6 or 7 years. And we all came together to talk about the acquisition. And so our focus first and foremost was, can we acquire this company back? Through those conversations, it became more and more real. And then we started to be like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Now who's in charge? And so when we were talking about it, we were talking about kind of wiping the slate clean and starting fresh to a certain degree, both for financial reasons, but also for vision and future reasons. And so naturally the conversation became Anthony and Ian kind of turning to me and saying, hey, we think you should be CEO. And I think the reasons why are because of my background in talent management specifically, but also being OG with YouTube all the way back to 2009, 2010, so I've seen the lifespan of YouTube and digital content and creators in general. And I've been fighting for it for the better part of 15 years, maybe longer at this point. And I think when we came together, we talked about wanting to make sure we all agreed on the morals and values of how to lead a company. And those were things like, what we wanted to be able to pay people in terms of living wages, and how we wanted to create work-life balance and what kind of culture that leads to. So it was things like, I don't ever want employees to think I went home, but now I've got hours more of work to do, even though I'm supposed to be clocking out, right? Or how do we make sure to have people who feel taken care of in a way? And that's things like, we make sure everybody's fed every day, at multiple meals, if not breakfast and lunch, then you're taking lunch to go for dinner, things like that. And it was a foundational aspect of what kind of culture do we want to create? What kind of leaders do we want to be? And how do we want to make our stamp in the industry that says you can achieve success and you don't have to lead with fear to do it. And so I think us aligning on that vision gave them the confidence that I was going to be able to come in and acknowledge where I had strong skill sets and acknowledge where I had shortcomings. And so it wasn't just that, it was also looking to our advisors and our resources in terms of coaching, right? So not only do I have executive coaching, but also we've been able to provide that to the company. Management, coaching and training, resources to be able to, I call her my work therapist, where I'll go sit with my executive coach and I'll be like, hey, I've never done this kind of thing before. I have these resources. I have questions. What else can I do? How can I learn and grow? And I think that's the attitude that we all wanted to come to the table with. And when we knew that we all had that, they had the confidence in me to be able to lead that charge. So I'm never coming into a room saying, I'm the CEO because I'm the smartest person here. I'm coming to in the room saying, I acknowledge who we've hired to be experts in what subjects. And I want to lead with their expertise. And then we come together and we make decisions as a team. So being the CEO doesn't mean like, I've got the key to the city and I can do whatever I want. It means I'm leading in collaboration and I'm leading by example.
That makes absolute sense. And what do you think has stayed the same since the business started, the channel started almost 20 years ago, and what's changed?
We're still committed to YouTube, more committed now than ever. We're still committed to social media and especially platforms like TikTok and Instagram. We still upload on Facebook. The revenue there is very significant. So, there's a lot of that. I'd say some of our creative process is still the same, although it's definitely evolved and become more inclusive. I think, the only changes really were that I just kind of cut some red tape so that they had a more clear path to upload, right? And yeah, I feel like it wasn't a drastic like pivot so much as it was, hey, here's what's working. How do we make it better? And how do we improve it from there?
I know it's working much better and the revenue's
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah.
When you made the acquisition and you bought it back, what were the first levers that you pulled to grow the business?
When I first started, we leaned into the tone and voice of the channels. And that was specifically leaning away from anything punishment based, anything that felt like it was punching down, anything that felt adverse to the mission statement of comedy rooted in friendship. And so we really leaned into that plus the delineation between each channel. Why are we taking this show and why is it on this channel versus that one? And it gave everybody a lens in which to think and create content through. And then from there, we were able to say, we have a lot of creatives in the building and they love to pitch. Even when there was a little bit of this culture sometimes where it was like, let me corner you at lunch. I have this idea and let me, and so we were like, okay, we don't want this to become a thing where people are just kind of constantly pitching. And I wanted to reward people by saying like, hey, some people's here, a lot of people here, their job is not to pitch content. So when they're passionate enough to come to the table and have a pitch, I not only want to be able to create guidelines for them to understand what's going to be successful and why, but I want to financially incentivize them. So we created a quarterly pitch session where anybody from the company who's not a programming team member whose job is literally dedicated to pitching content and including our freelance talent, so our part-timers, can come to the table with ideas. And not only do they get a chance to pitch an idea and see it come to life and then get that bonus as a part of it, they also get an education on why we say no. So sometimes we'll pass on something and we'll say, hey, we already had something like this in development, but we'll give you a smaller, kickback just because you gave us a really great idea for it. Or, hey, no, this isn't going to work because it doesn't lean into the mission statement in this way, or it doesn't follow the guidelines in this way, and so we constantly are trying to create paths of communication and that consistent dialogue to say, here's what works for Smosh. And we love when people push the boundaries. There have been a lot of things here where, I think one of our prime examples is that we talk about all the time is culinary crimes. We had Marcus, who I think may have been a PA at the time, but became a coordinator very quickly. It was his idea. I think he called it like Reddit recipes or something like that. And we worked with him on the development of it. We kind of like took it and run with him. And it also gave him an opportunity to come on as a producer and sometimes director. So it gave somebody who was looking for a path to learn more, the path to execute that in real time. And I think that serves as such a great example of, when you open up these lanes, people can really rise to the occasion. And so it's not for every single show, but the great thing is sometimes people come in and they're like, hey, I don't have a full show pitch, but have we thought about this twist on this format that we do? And we're like, wait, that's amazing. Like, that's such a great idea. So it really provides the lanes for people to, like, within a professional environment, show more passion and excitement about something that they might not normally get to do. And it also creates the boundaries necessary to make sure that that doesn't get out of control.
It's great to hear about those internal promotions. And from a commercial perspective, how do you think about the mix between AdSense and sponsorship and merch and live?
Yeah, I mean, we try and create a good balance. I think these are all levers where we don't know what's gonna ebb and flow, right? So to start, branded wasn't really taken advantage of here at Smosh. And, I don't know, I can't comment on if that was like, we just didn't have the right people selling for us, or, if the market looked at us differently, right? Like, views and engagement are much different now than they were back in 2023. So there's a multitude of reasons that could be why. But when I inherited Smosh, when I thought about those avenues of revenue, there was a lot of revamping we had to do, right? So with YouTube, it was one thing of, YouTube AdSense was pretty reliable and we've grown it since, but bringing in branded was strategic. We weren't trying to just be like, who wants to pay us to do, like, we'll represent any, it was, how can we position ourselves out in the market for people to understand what we have to offer as creatives and as comedians? And then how do we make sure that we're representing brands genuinely? And so it wasn't well, if you pay us, we'll talk about it. It was if we would actually use this brand and if one of our talent can give a very genuine read to it, then we should partner with them. And if there's any hesitation from us or our audience, we should just say no. And so that quickly became partnerships with larger brands now, that we work with very often, like Rocket Money or Mint Mobile or any of those. For Mint Mobile especially, like, we got phones where they were loaded on, and some of the talent who read those things used those phones for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and was like, okay, I feel confident to be able to say this is actually a good service. I didn't like have a dropped call every single time I tried to talk to somebody, and my messages went through and the internet was very accessible. And knowing that that's an affordable phone plan to be able to offer our audience who might be struggling to make ends meet, like, those are the types of value adds that we really wanted to provide. So anytime we think about that specifically, we think, what kind of experience or value add are we providing our audience? And we lean away from things where, we feel like, oh, it might be not the greatest feel or something we wouldn't use, or even like risky, right? So sometimes we get asked to do kind of sports betting stuff. And for us, it's like, well, one, we're not very excited about that. I don't think anybody in this building is really doing a lot of sports betting. But two, we would never want to pitch something to our audience that puts them in a position to be in debt or to lose, any amount of money that might be meaningful to them. So instead, we leaned into the Rocket Money of it all, and they've been a great partner because we've been able to say, like, hey, this is something that could potentially help you save money. I've even used Rocket Money before where I was like, I didn't realize I was paying for a Hulu subscription and I'm also paying for this other Hulu plus Disney. So why did I do that? Right? Like, so those value adds. And then the last thing that we really revamped was merch. I think I'm not 100% sure what the strategy was before me coming on board, but I took the time to sit down with the talent as well as the programming team to say, can we create merch that we would want to wear ourselves? Can we create merch where we're not saying to the talent, like, hey, put this on before the video? Instead, we're saying, hey, here's a rack that you have access to, and you can get any size, any piece that you want. Are there pieces here that you actually like? And can you be part of the creation process before we even get there? And then I was able to see the excitement. So not only did our merchandising manager, Mallory, really collaborate with our talent to say, what excites you? And then we created, the Smosh Essentials line, which I think was one of our like biggest and best first launches of, you don't really have to know Smosh to like the colors or the material or those things. It does say Smosh on it, so you probably want to be a fan of Smosh, but that was something where even the greater company was like, we want those pieces. Those are so cool. We're happy to represent. And then she took it a step further and was able to sit down with talent like Courtney and Shane and say, and so many others now, and say, what would you make? Right. And that created the Brutal Tee, or that created Courtney's URL, which is a really fun, like, Y2K throwback that I feel like is so powerful and so awesome. That also created moments with other talent like Angela, where she came out with the Calm Down Tee, which is in honor and memory of her dog Spork that has passed, as well as Amanda Lehan's run of Chronically Offline. I mean, even people in my life were like, I don't know or care about Smosh, but I want a Chronically Offline t-shirt, right? So it's the heart of collaboration and making sure that we're thinking about things from, you don't have to be a Smosh fan, or I cared even just like about guaranteeing our audience that the quality of the shirt wasn't going to just get completely unravel in, a wash cycle or two. I literally told Mallory, I was like, go have some of our cast just destroy some of these samples, and what holds up is what we should be working with. And so it was taking the time and space to think about those things and communicate that effectively to our audience. So like, hey, we're not pressuring you to buy merch at a higher price. But what we will say is it's at a higher price because we can guarantee you it's good. You're going to like the feel. You're going to like the look. It's not going to deteriorate in the wash. And it's something where you can wear, and like the color, even the colorways, you can mix and match. Oftentimes I mix and match them with my outfits for work. And I feel like, wow, this is a great outfit. I'm confident to wear this. And, it says Smosh on it. Looks great.
It's really great to hear. I love those examples there. And what about the studio? I know you've increased the space. What does that unlock?
Yeah. So we went on a journey to find this new place. We got to this point. We're so privileged and fortunate. I can't even express the gratitude enough that we realized we had outgrown this place, but we have the ability and access to be able to launch more content and expand what it is that we're offering. We just didn't have the physical space to do it. If I ask the art team to build one more set, they're going to be like, where do I put it? Like, your office? Go ahead, So we worked with AJ Dorn at Newmark, who was incredible, really understood the vision of what we needed in order to bring the heart of what we have here into a bigger building that also matures what it is that we do as a company. And I hate saying like it feels more corporate because, to a certain degree it does. It does feel more corporate, but we like to make sure that that feeling is a little bit more bespoke to us. While you walk in the building, in this new building, and it should feel more professional and like, an elevated atmosphere. It's not something where it feels like, oh, well, now I can't talk to anybody, or now I can't do this, or now I have to wear an appropriate, outfit or, whatever. To me, it's us maturing. We're growing up, and we both needed the additional space. So this current building is 17,000 square feet, and this new building is about 32,000. And that includes 2 floors of office space. So, I want to hire people to help, add into our different departments. I don't have desk space for them, and I don't have another office here. And then, on top of that, we don't have conference space. So sometimes it's, Ian especially being like, well, I won't use my office today so that people have conference room space. And, I wanted to acknowledge that we want to create an atmosphere where you can feel confident that you're going into a room and you are dedicated to that space and time that you need in order to get what work you need done. And sometimes that means providing a really flexible work from home space, but sometimes that also means we have to look at the future of the company and the needs. And if I want to hire certain types of people, I need to provide them with an office. There's certain conversations in this building that can't just be public in the middle of a bullpen, and I need to make sure that people feel confident that they can get work done comfortably. And even the programming team is like, hey, we're elbow and elbow with each other at this point at these desks. So even their space is upgraded in a way that I think honors and respects the amazing work that they've done for us. And I'm hoping that they can all be proud of. Like, we can walk into this new building and we can say like, wow, look at how far we've come. And like, I'm proud to work in this space and I feel taken care of.
That's great. And what does the team look like now? How many people have you got, and what sort of departments?
Yeah, we have about 70 employees. At this point, it might be, 71 or 72. I don't know. And it's important to me to acknowledge that, we never want to get to a point where I specifically don't want to get to a point where I don't know everybody's names. But that's also me just needing to do a little catch up because at first, when we acquired the company, we were in survival mode. We were like, how do we make this work? How do we make sure we get through the last 6 months of 2023? And we kind of like head down tunnel visioned, you know, stick to it, work hard, get the eyeballs, work through these processes. And then, this last year we were able to look up and say, okay, we have a lot of work to do to expand these teams. I never want somebody feeling like they have to work in this building until 9 p.m. to get their workload done. And I also don't want them to then feel like, well, I left at, 6 or 7, like, to respect my work-life balance. But that means that this channel doesn't get this thing for this shoot because I can't complete the work in the work hours provided to me. So we made a mandate. Anthony, Ian, and I made a mandate that was, we will staff with our needs and not in anticipation of them unless we are sure we need that. So I didn't want to do the thing where, okay, well, we have some capital or we've got some funds. Let's just hire some people and just like flood the zone. Instead, it was, okay, this team is struggling to make ends meet with the time that's allotted. We clearly need to make sure that we get X amount of people in support. And what does that look like? What are the roles? How are they rolling up to people? Are we then having managers, right? And who are making decisions? Do they have the right training? Do they have the right power and authority to make those decisions? What guidelines do they have? So it was looking at the different departments and our future needs and wants. And sometimes that's taking on a project that teaches us what we need. I think this year it was the We're All Gonna Die live series. That was like on top of everybody's work. It was a very quick decision, but George Primavera just made a series that I was like, we can't not be a part of this. He's so great at it, and what we've been able to do with him and what our talent are able to bring to the table. Like, I just knew that we would learn so much from this and that it would provide so much of what are trying to do next year better. And we were able to say, okay, we can dedicate this team to our live efforts. This will make sure that we have the right, producers and cam and gaffers and this, that, and the other. And we've adjusted the lighting a million times. We've adjusted the, this, that, and the other, and staffed appropriately. So now, instead of, a Swiss Army knife of an IT guy, we have Tim, who manages Lopati, who came in here not just to help me with my microphone, but also is available for our lives to make sure that we're set up correctly and that he can run a rehearsal, and that doesn't take away Tim from being able to make sure everybody's needs in this building are met, right? Or the other way around. So we're looking at what are the needs, how are we staffing teams appropriately, and most of it is through that lens of, can we go home at 6? Can you have a work-life balance? There's no such thing as an emergency after hours, right? Sometimes there is, it's very rare, but most of the time I'm like, guys, we're talking about digital media and YouTube. Most of these things that are quote unquote emergencies are things that can be handled the next morning. And we demand that same respect of our external partners as well. And I make sure to try and be as good of an example as I can be of that here in this building. And that's when we look through the departments and make sure that we're hiring efficiently.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I really want to talk about the future as well. What do
Yeah.
you think the next 5 years looks like?
I'll really lean into Smosh wanting to make its stamp on the industry, make its mark on the industry as a premium brand. We Last year we sponsored JFL New Faces Creators, and we'll definitely be back next year sponsoring New Faces Creators. I have literally had somebody reach out to me being like, "Are you guys going to sponsor it again?" Because we were thinking, and I was like, "Nope, it's ours." So that's something that we're fighting for, is being able to, you know, mean what we say when we want to usher in the next gen of talent. We were able to meet some really incredible talent last year, and we worked with them, and some of that content is coming out now. So we were able to collaborate beyond just showcasing them at the Just for Laughs festival. We want to do more of things like that. So we're looking at the festivals out there. We're looking at the premium content that we can collaborate with. We're looking at the big swings that we can make over the next few years. And that might mean co-financing something or producing something or piloting things and selling them beyond. But what it does mean for sure is working with our creatives, talent and programming alike, and bringing more of their ideas to life, and looking to the external industry, especially at a time where it's suffering, and saying, who are the showrunners and creative directors and writers out there who are hungry, for work, who have experience maybe we don't have, and can come to the table with us, get the vision, get the dream, and help us be better at what we do, right? How can we provide jobs, but also challenge ourselves to push the boundaries of what we expect of ourselves and others in content? So I think about that in two ways. I think both, how do we, ground more of our comedy and create something that's subverts expectations out there, right? I don't want people to think, oh, they're making a movie, must be another Smosh the movie, right? I want people to think, well, what could they be making? And then see it and be like, I did not expect that of them. That's awesome. And then on the other side, I think it's really challenging ourselves to dream big, right? What are the ideas that we have, and how can we partner with people in the industry to make that more exciting or bring it to life? And that might be us partnering with other creators, other brands, other people out there, and saying, like, what does a collaboration between the two of us look like? And what does that look like on this platform or that platform? And so we're balancing the idea of, how do we continue to make sure that our audience feels like they're getting content for free, which would be an AVOD system or platform like YouTube, versus what would we put behind a paywall and why? And we're very conscious of what we're asking for, why we're asking for it, and making sure it feels like an added value. So one of the prime examples of that is in January, the teaser dropped today, but on Monday the trailer will drop of Smosh Hospital. And that's a live show that was born of a format and idea 2 years ago from Shane Topp. And he creative directed the sitcom, and now he's creative directing the same format but hospital. And that is something that's going to be, it has challenged us not just in our production capabilities, but also in our performers' abilities. And it's really bringing us to the next level. So it's something that is going to be behind a paywall, but it's something where I think the production value and the hard work shows. And it really elevates what it is that we're able to provide to an audience at a time where I think the traditional industry just doesn't expect that of us.
It sounds like you've got a lot of in the pipeline. What's
Yeah,
the hardest decision you've had to make as the CEO?
that's a great question. What's the hardest decision I've had to make as a CEO? I think it's always, always hard to acknowledge feedback that you get when the company sees a problem or an issue and they think that there's a really quick and easy solution for it, and there's just not. So sometimes the hard decisions are me saying to people, this isn't as easy as you think it is, and I have to take ownership over our faults and our failures, and I fully do. But acknowledging with people like, hey, we tried this, it failed. It's not something that we could have known was going to fail, or we tried a solution to a problem that didn't work. We own that and we take it on. But I can't always give people what they want, right? Like we have employees and talent and other people, third parties who ask for a lot of contradictory things. So sometimes the hardest decision is making a decision that I think is for the greater good. And I hope most of the time is for the greater good, but doesn't make everybody happy. And it's that balance of understanding if it was possible to make everybody happy, I would be trying that all the time. But acknowledging, there's only so many people, like, there's only so much one person can do, and there's only so many people in charge who can make greater decisions. And so sometimes also the hard decision is I have to acknowledge where my skill set ends, and I have to bring on a team member who has that expertise, who has that skill set, and try not to feel bad about it. Acknowledging this is my job. And that means that I can try and do things outside of it. I can try and help support things, but sometimes I'm not the best person for it. And I want to go find the person who is the best person for it. And I can put my ego aside and I can say, if this helps the greater good of the company, let's do it.
And Smosh is one of the longest standing channels. What do you think the future of the creator economy looks like?
I love this question because, there's no right or wrong answer. What I will say is when I think of the future of the creator economy, I also think of the future of the traditional industry. And I keep seeing people on LinkedIn, I preach about this a lot, so apologies, but I keep seeing people on LinkedIn say, I saw this YouTuber and their video got 8 or 10 million views, in, a day, a week, whatever. And, this late night host doesn't even get that that kind of viewership or those kinds of ratings on, one night or on their best night or whatever. And it's very much this us versus them mentality that I'm just not for. I see the future of the industry as traditional and digital, acknowledging that there's no such thing as traditional and digital anymore, and it is all one space. And I see the future of the industry, I hope, is both sides being able to embrace the heart of YouTube, which is collaboration. Digital creators, whether you were platformed on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, have all benefited from the rising tides lift all ships mentality. So, my social team takes Mythical's social team out to lunch very often, or they grab coffee together and they swap tips. We do that with Try Guys. We do that with Critical Role. We do, whoever's at Dropout, right? Whoever's out there, our head of production, Amanda Barnes, gets lunch or coffee with Dropout's head of production. And they're like, how do you operate? How do we operate? And I think traditional and digital need to come together and recognize there is no such thing as traditional or digital anymore. There's just budget levels, right? Like that's basically it. Just my budget level is just a bit lower than your budget level. And then HBO's is a bit higher than that, right? And there is a middle ground and like a melding that I think is happening, whether we like it or not, that we can embrace and come to the table and say, you're not competition. I'm not looking at SNL saying we're going to beat them one day. I'm looking at SNL saying, how can we get in the same room? How can we talk about what we do great and what you do great? And how can you make us better? And how can we make you better? And wouldn't it be awesome if we all sat down together and found ways to collaborate, and survived this? And it's not about, having a monopoly over an industry or a system. That's one of the things that I think is beautiful. It's like, how do you have a monopoly on the internet? Like, good luck, because every platform has tried it, and platforms come and go, but the ones that have remained have been able to acknowledge that, YouTube doesn't say creators shouldn't be on TikTok, and TikTok doesn't say creators shouldn't be on YouTube, right? They embrace that TikTok can market YouTube and YouTube can market TikTok, or, other platforms can help support other platforms. And it is an ecosystem and not, this competition where we need to be vying for each other's time or the audience's attention, right? Like when I sit down and watch a TV show on Netflix, I'm scrolling on my phone too, right? And how can we make those things work together instead of fight against each other?
That's great to hear. I fully agree with that approach. Ali, it's been great to talk with you today. Before we go, just one final question.
Yeah.
If you had any advice for creator CEOs or CEOs working with creators, what would that be?
Okay, so I'd say to creators, you have to decide. I like to say creators can be CEOs, but not all CEOs should be creators, right? So you have to decide as a creator, how much of your art do you want to sacrifice to focus on the business? For some people, no problem. They can balance it. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I am saying one of the reasons why Anthony and Ian picked me as the CEO is because they wanted to be able to focus on their art. And I do see a lot of companies fail because the creator CEO hybrid is pushing for things creatively that don't always make sense business wise or financially, or the other way around, pushing for things financially or business wise that don't always feed properly into the organic creative that you're looking for. So you have to acknowledge, how much of that do you even know? How much do you want to sacrifice on either side? Can you find partners out there who can support you? Like I said, like, I'm not looking to hire somebody because I think I'm smarter than them and they're going to listen to me. I'm trying to hire somebody to come in as our head of marketing because they know more than me. And I want to respect that I might not always agree with what they advise or the decisions they want to make, but I'm going to find the middle ground and I'm going to say, here's our objective, here's our goal. How do we get there? And that's what creators and CEOs like need to be able to, balance, is how much of the business do you really know? And sometimes I think it really helps that we have a separation of CEO and creator here, because Anthony and Ian and the rest of the team can stay hyper focused on the creative. And I can say, hey, here's this deal. I want to say yes to it. What creative would you bring to the table to make this make sense? Does it make sense? Or is it something we need to say no to because the creative is something we wouldn't make without the money or the brand or the whatever behind it? Right. So those are really productive and fruitful conversations that even if we say no to something, are a learning opportunity for us to level up what we do next. And that's the kind of challenge that I want in my business and that they're looking for in their creative. And that's the back and forth and dialogue that makes us trust each other more. And I think that's what creators and CEOs or creator CEOs need to be looking for out of their partners, is you can still hold the company's mission statement, the heart of why you created your content and your channel and your brand. You can still root it in that. But that doesn't mean that a CEO takes over and makes final decisions. So let's educate ourselves on what it is that we need, what it is that we expect, and then let's make sure that we're finding partners who help balance that instead of feeling like, you're butting heads with that person often. And it's a scary process. It's a very scary process, but it's not impossible. And I think it's so worthwhile and very fulfilling.
Very wise words there. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us. It's been fascinating to hear all about it. And we're really wishing you good luck with the journey and looking forward to seeing the next phases.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Excellent. Thanks for listening to The Business of Creators. I've got some big guests coming, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, if this is your first time listening, I'm Ian Shepherd, co-founder and co-CEO of Electrify Video Partners. We invest in large, established creator businesses to accelerate their growth. For creators, that means three things. First, the chance to take money off the table today. Second, the expertise and a team to scale your business faster. And third, a creative transition plan, enabling you to step back or exit the business altogether. We've raised over $100 million and made 10 investments, including YouTube channels Veritasium, Fern, and Fireship. If you're a creator thinking about the next stage, please get in touch to find out more.